I first met Dennis at Band of Brothers, Sisters and Friends, which is a veteran group that meets in Rockwall at the Golf and Athletic Club on Fridays, and got to know him. He's a Marine. He's going to tell you about his service. And then I met Sherry, his wife. We hit it off, and we've just been learning about each other ever since. And he is a true patriot, and we wanted to introduce him to our community because this is a really important election. So thank you all for coming.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll do the official intro. My name is Dennis London. I'm running for state representative here for House District 33. I'm a service-disabled Marine Corps veteran. I'm a small business owner who also has a lifelong history of service to God, country, family, and community. Okay? I grew up in Maryland, and at the age of 17, I joined the Marine Corps. I passed up 2 scholarships to different universities, one of them to University of Maryland Eastern Shore, another one to Penn State. Okay, I did have scholarly opportunities ahead of me, but I decided to serve the country instead. Okay, in the military, one of the things, or 2 of the things that we learn are leadership and teamwork. Okay, those are instilled in us. And they're crucial for our success during a mission, but they're also crucial for our success during survival. If you're going to survive a combat mission, or you're going to be in something like that, you have to be able to work as a team. You have to have leadership skills and ability. The reason I say that is because going down to Austin, not necessarily stepping into a war zone, right? Although some people may say, okay, but you have to be able to manage, and you have to be able to negotiate, and you have to be able to lead. And so I'm telling you this because that military experience has helped set me up for that. So I served for 8 years. I managed to either live or visit in over a dozen countries. I did joint operations with multiple foreign countries, also with their governments in some instances. I was involved with Operation Just Cause. I was involved with Operation Desert Storm, first Gulf War. Had a top secret clearance in the Marine Corps. And then when I got out, I took that leadership skills, those traits that were instilled in me, and I took them into the corporate world. And I've been involved in the corporate world for the last 30 years. I have a cybersecurity company, but prior to that, I was the information systems manager for an international Japanese-owned organization. Then I became the global manager for Fortune 50 Corporation. Again, this is where leadership, this is where teamwork, management skills come into play. I was the senior engineer for one of the leading cybersecurity companies in the world. And I worked with Fortune 50 corporations all over the globe. And I had to try to coordinate with them. I had to do implementations, we had to manage, we had projects, and you can understand the rest, I'm sure. So, why am I running? Because it wasn't getting done. And what am I saying wasn't getting done? If we look up here, you can see our legislative priorities. And I know this is kind of small, but it will be up here for you to come up and read and look at before. And if you're not familiar with the legislative priorities, okay, first one was election integrity. Did we resolve election integrity?
No.
Okay, did we make a little bit of progress?
Yeah.
A little, right? But what also happened in there? We did have some changes. We made it a felony for people to improperly count and report. But we downgraded from a felony to a misdemeanor for the actual fraudulent voting. Is that progress?
No.
Okay. We have religious freedom. How far did we go with getting religious freedom here in Texas?
Pass the law.
No.
We really didn't move down the road that far on this one. Okay, so there's another one. How about, and this one really sticks in my craw, banning of child gender modification and genital mutilation. Okay, where did that go? That went nowhere. We didn't get any progress on it. Okay, abolition of abortion, we got the heartbeat bill. Okay, that's not the abolition of abortion. So again, the ball got down the field, it didn't get across the goal line. Constitutional carry. Did we get constitutional carry? We got a portion of it.
Sort of.
Okay, we didn't get the whole thing. Now, for constitutional carry, that would be equivalent for anyone who is old enough and authorized to own a weapon to be able to carry it anywhere they want. That would be constitutional carry. But right now, you still have LTC holders capable of carrying in places and at times when the normal person cannot. Okay, that is not constitutional carry. Again, the ball was moved down the field. It wasn't brought into the goal line. We didn't actually score on that. Monument protection, that went nowhere. And for a state that prides itself on our history, which is a very rich history, one of only 2 states that were ever actual countries beforehand. Texas and Hawaii are the only states that are allowed to fly their flags at the same height as the US flag, because we were an actual country beforehand. But nowhere. We didn't get anything. We can't even protect the Alamo. Right? If you ask anybody about Texas, what do you know about Texas? They're going to say Dallas Cowboys and the Alamo.
And the border.
Well, the border now, absolutely. Yeah, I'll get to that one in a little bit. All right, next we have school choice for all. I'm not sure how you all feel about this, but that was one of our legislative priorities. School choice for all means that anyone who wants to homeschool their child, anyone who wants to take their child out of a school that is not teaching them good Christian moral ethics and values, it's not actually teaching them, how about education? Not teaching them math, not teaching them science, not teaching them English. Okay, they can take that child out of there, take the taxpayer money that they're paying, and have the funds follow the kid, whether it's to a private institution or homeschooling or what have you. Okay, I think that instead of just people who are able to afford it, it should be an option for everyone. That went nowhere. And then we have banning of taxpayer-funded lobbying. So the banning of taxpayer-funded lobbying, is everybody familiar with what taxpayer-funded lobbying is? That's where they take your tax dollars, they give them to a lobbyist who turns around and comes back and asks for more money so that they can go and give it to somebody in a legislation, or to a PAC, or to try and convince some lawmaker somewhere that, okay, here's this extra money, so you're getting taxed twice for this, really, if you think about it, to get this legislation passed. Now, there are some areas, and I just found this out today because I had a long conversation with our sheriff. There are some areas and pieces of legislation that this actually is not a bad thing for. So I wouldn't necessarily say ban all taxpayer-funded lobbying. Tony understands from a law enforcement perspective, right? You have agencies that are down there for sheriffs and peace officers that are actually lobbying, and they get their funds, and these organizations run because of taxpayer. Okay, so these are probably good organizations. So again, and I mentioned this last night, if anybody was at the forum, if I don't know something, I'm not just going to make a statement and go with it. Okay, I was asked about foster care and what can we do within those systems. I didn't know. So I still don't know. I would have to sit down. I would talk with CASA. I would talk with CAC. I would talk with DPS. I would talk with those agencies. I would talk with them and find out, what do you need? How would I be able to legislate if I didn't know what they need? I'd just be up there dictating them. I'd just be saying, well, I think they need this. I don't want to do that. I want to actually give them what they want, what they need, and what is within reason too, right? You can't give them the moon, right? There are some people that will ask for everything. If you say, well, what do you need? Oh, here's my wish list. Okay, well, we have to put it within reason, right? And then you also are going to take that legislation, you're going to put it in front of your other peers, and this is where those management and negotiation skills would come in handy. You'd be able to actually walk through and talk with them about that. You'd be able to say, okay, look, this is why this is good. This part, we can talk about that. And then I can take it back to the constituents, or you can take it to your constituents. Because this isn't just about House District 33. This is about all of Texas. I'm not running for me. This was not something that I necessarily said, I'm going to be a legislator. Okay, and for those of you that know me, that was not really what I wanted out of this. Because when we got here from California, yes, I moved here from California. We talked about this a little bit. It offers a very unique, I'm sorry, I know you hate that expression. Okay, it offers a unique expression. It offers a unique perspective, whereas I lived through the decline of the Republican Party in California.
Tell them how you got there, because you skipped that. How
The
you
Marine
got
Corps
to go.
shipped me, so.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I married you.
I have a professional geologist license, so my license was tied to California. So until I had a job that I didn't need to use that license, we were stuck. But when we got unstuck, we got here.
Yes.
And I was telling, I think you, that I was coming to Houston a lot on business, and when he was working for that security vendor, he was in Plano all the time on business.
Yeah.
So he's been coming here for decades, and so have I.
Since 2001, I've been coming to Texas, and I used to go up to Plano all the time. The company was McAfee. All right, they had a building at Alpha Midway, so I used to go there when they had that little 4-story building. And then they built their location out on Preston, at Preston and headquarters. That's when 121 ended at Preston. Okay, I'm sure some of you remember that, right? We would walk out into the parking lot, what was supposed to be a parking lot because it wasn't even done yet, and we would see the cattle across the street. We'd see the combines out. Okay, we're sitting there watching, I'm like, I love Texas. I want to move here. And then people are telling me, I bought 20 acres and I'm building a custom home. And this was in 2003-ish time frame. And I'm going, oh, wow, that sounds cool, but man, how much are you making? Remember, my mind was thinking California at that time. And they're like, well, it's not that much. What do you mean not that much? Well, it's only 200 grand. Excuse me? That's just for the land or just for the house? They're like, no, that's the whole thing. It was 20 grand, or 20 acres, it was 200 grand for that, plus about a 3,500, 4,000 square foot home. And I see some people nodding, they're like, yeah, I remember those times. It's not like that now, is it? No. All right, and the whole idea, I mean, after I got here and we were giving started going around talking to the GOP, I started talking with the different organizations, the men's group, the women's group, and I would talk about what happened. And so the SREC, State Republican Executive Committee, our member here, Jerry Fisher, said, can you talk to people about this? I said, sure, no problem. I have no problem talking in front of people. 30 years in IT, I've been on stages all around the world. I have no problem with that. How many people are you thinking? Oh, just, maybe about 100 or so. Okay, that's fine. So I put together a presentation. Guess what it's called? Don't California My Texas. Given by a guy who moved here from California. Because experience is a great teacher. Right? I was able to take that California lens and hold it up against what's happening here in Texas. And I'll tell you, the writing I see on the walls here looks a lot like the graffiti I saw there. There are a lot of things happening here. And I see a bunch of you nodding, yes, you understand the things that are happening here happen in California. Except over there, they had a legislature that was made up of all Democrats because they kicked all the Republicans out. And what they do is they basically said, we now can create sweeping reforms. And they did. Even against voters, even against everything else. They just did whatever they wanted. Now, I say that because I'm going to set up this next part, and this is one of the things that I want you to really consider and look into. We're the only state in the country that allows our minority party, which is the Democrats, to actually chair and vice chair committees in our House. We have 40 committees, and if you ask the incumbent, and I'll say his name, Justin Holland, you ask Justin Holland about why he allows this to happen, why he voted to allow this to continue on, he'll tell you they need a seat at the table. They need to be able to represent their districts, their people. They were elected into office. They are in the committee. They have a seat at the table. They don't need to run it. Right. Okay? We give up, I think the number is 37% of our chair seats to Democrats. Out of those 40 committees, we give up.
I think it's 15.
Yeah. Okay. Why? Why do we do that? Well, a better question is, why do we give up 67% of the vice chair seats? That's a better question. I want to know why we're giving up 1/3 here and 2/3 here. There's no way we're going to get legislation accomplished. You want to know why these legislative priorities didn't go? That's part of the reason. Oh, but they're not in any substantive committees. If it's a committee, it was made for a reason. It was substantial. So when we ask him about these things, and I challenge you, ask him. Okay, look up his voting record. We have all the QR codes here, and we say on here, who did it better? And we show you one person that actually advocated for our priorities. We show you another person who advocated for our priorities, and then we show you somebody who didn't. Guess who I'm running against?
The one who didn't.
The one who didn't, okay? If it was either of these, I wouldn't be running. I'll tell you that right now. I would probably be supporting them. Well, maybe not one, but.
Yeah.
So, but that's the reason. If we have somebody who looks at what we tell them to do and doesn't bother to do it, is that person worth sending back? I say no.
No.
Especially when they're cozying up with Speaker of the House, Dave Phelan. They're cozying up with all the Democrats. They're involved in all the PACs that are they're being paid by, so he's a realtor, and he gets paid by the Texas Real Estate PAC. It's TPRE, I think it is, Texas Professional Real
TPAC,
Estate.
yeah.
And you can tell through his legislation that he actually supports everything that they want him to do. Not what you've asked him to do, or you've asked him to do, or I've asked him to do. No, he's doing what the PACs are asking him to do. And that's been part of the problem. That's what I saw in California. You had politicians who would say one thing here, yes, I'm going to do this for you. Yes, I'm going to. Yes, I'm going to. They go over here and go, oh, you don't want me to? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Put the money in their pocket and they walk away. And you're sitting over here going, but I thought you were going to do, okay. Right? So that's why I'm running and everything else. Now, what am I saying that I will do for you? I support the legislative priorities. I will advocate for them. I've already pledged for term limits. 3 terms max. That's what I pledged. Put it on Facebook, signed the petition, signed it, sent it off. I'm like, yep, I'm good. That's all. If I decide to stay in and you decide to keep me there for 3 terms, that's the max. I'm done. And it's not a stepping stone. Oh, I'll go to the Senate next, or maybe I'll run for Congress. Or no, I do not want to do that. I believe we need to get back to having statesmen. You remember those statesmen where people would actually come from the farms, come from their businesses. They would go, they would legislate, and they would be the representatives of the people. And they would make sure that they did, okay, great, all right, now they turned around and they were done with legislation and went back to their communities, and they had to look their people in the face. They had to live with them. They would go have coffee with them, meals with them. You would work with them. What happened to that? Well, it started to become lucrative. It started to become profitable to be a politician. So people said, well, maybe I don't need to go back. I'm making more money there. That's why we need term limits. And one thing that makes me absolutely disgusted about what's going on down there is that a part-time legislator can make full-time benefits. I don't know if you knew this.
Not benefits, pension.
Pension.
Yeah.
So, were you aware of this?
Doesn't surprise
No?
me.
So we got a doesn't surprise me, we got a yes, we've got a no. Yeah. So if they I'm gonna say survive, because that's really what it is. 4 terms comes out to 8 years. Okay, if they do 8 years by the time they are 50 or 60.
60, yeah.
8 years by the time they're 60, they qualify for full-time retirement pension. But it's not based off of a part-time legislation
Tied
session.
into the judicial system.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. It's tied to the judicial system. It's based off of a district court judge's full-time salary, which on average, I understand, is about $140,000, $150,000. Do you know how much a state rep makes on an annual basis? It's about $7,400. So I'm not going there for the money. Obviously, $7,400 a year. Okay, you work for 140 days out of the year, not counting anything that's going to be on with your special sessions. So there's not a whole lot of money to be a state legislator. Oh, but if you can do 4 terms and you can survive 8 years, you now qualify for full-time pension off of a district court's judge salary. That's wrong. Why do we have a state budget that people can't control? Why can't we get this one? Tell you what, axe that right there. That'll help. Oh, but it's only 150 legislators. For how many years have we been doing this? How many people are doing it? And by the way, you can buy additional credits for additional years. I served for 8 years in the Marine Corps. I can buy 5 years worth of service and add that on, making approximately $3,400 extra per year.
Like $3,200. So it costs about $700 to buy a one-time payment of $700 to get $3,200 for that year of service.
Mm-hmm.
So if you bought
5 years.
about 5 of them, he'd be making a payment of about $3,500 one time, and you'd be getting
About $16,000
16 grand for the rest of his life
per
on a
year.
pension. Who wouldn't do that?
Right? Well, but then they also have another option to add to that. They can buy up for any reason an additional 3 years. So if I were to go down there and do this, and I said, okay, I'm not doing term limits, I'm gonna see where this thing goes and blah, 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 and I do 8 years, I do the 4 terms, I could buy up for the extra 5 from my military service. I could buy the extra 3 for the just because, right, which gives 16 years worth of service. The ridiculous part to that is I would be only making, for every 2 years, now remember the annual basis is about $7,400, $7,500. That is how much I was making as an active legislator. I would then be able, and it makes me sick to say this, I would then be able, at full benefits, everything else, if I did just 8 years, $56,000 a year.
I got a question.
Yes.
One of the problems I see, what you're just talking about, is actually the salary.
Yep.
If we're already paying our legislators $7,400 a year, they can't survive on that. So it forces them to go out and either take money or whatever.
Sure.
We
But this
also
is,
increase their salary.
well, we're also, I can see the value behind that, sure. But this isn't meant to be a career. This is meant to be a part-time job. You are going to come in and you're going to legislate. You're only doing it for 140 days out of the year.
Every
That's
other.
not-
Every other year.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not 4 months every year. It's every other
A
year.
lot of the companies that employ these, if they're not business owners already, a lot of the companies that employ them, there's prestige in having, a state representative working for you. They
keep
get a
them on
lot
salary.
of leeway. They're able to do what they
They
need to
keep
do.
them on salary and they put them on a leave and they let them go down and legislate and do what they need to do because they can say, hey, we've put state rep works here. Okay, so these people should have jobs already. If they don't have a job and they think this is going to be their primary means of a living, well, they didn't do their homework. So, yes, ma'am.
The Democrats that left during the emergency sessions that caused a lot, was that responsible for a lot of these things not being voted on?
So these items were during the regular general session.
Okay.
Okay, when they left during the special session, this is where I have a problem also. They didn't get punished at all.
They didn't. I know that. That's awful.
They didn't even lose their chair or vice chair seats. Why?
Well, couldn't and that was going to be the second part of my question. Because they had these chairmanships, wasn't there something that could have been done to bring at least those chairpersons back because they were required for whatever reason?
If they would have, and I think Brian Slayton put this forward as an amendment, he wanted that if they don't come back, they lose their seats.
Okay.
That would be incentive to get them back.
Did anyone put that?
Justin Holland voted against it.
Oh, wow.
Well, because the Democrats are his friends. I'll tell you right now, and it's not a political stunt, he is a self-proclaimed rhino. He put it out on Facebook and said, I do not have to work with or support the Republican Party of Texas, and I do not have to work with or support the State Republican Executive Committee. I represent all 190,000 people within the district. And he's right, he does. He represents everybody. Who elected him? Republicans. We put him into office. I voted for him. I thought he was a good conservative guy until I started doing my homework. The deeper I dug, the more red flags I found.
Blue flags, you mean?
Say again?
Blue flags.
Well, blue flags, yeah, right? Red flags mean danger, blue flags. During the redistricting process, Brian Slayton put forth an amendment and asked and wanted it passed that we would have live streamed committees of the redistricting. Oh, thank you.
I know you.
She's like, I knew you'd want your notes. So the live streaming of the redistricting would have allowed us to see who was trying to do what, who was trying to, and I've heard it stated in multiple arenas. People are like, well, they're gerrymandering the districts. Okay, all right. Well, let's see what's happening. Let's see how that works.
Transparency.
All right. Well, Justin voted against it. That was HR 4 Amendment 8. I don't know if
I
anybody's
don't know if
taking
that was
notes.
Slayton or Todd, but it was somebody.
Yeah. And then HR 4 Amendment 13 would have allowed the House to speak out against the governor's executive order and rein in executive overreach. Didn't we need to rein in Abbott's overreach and things that were going on, right?
Yes.
Now Holland voted against that. Okay. H.R. 4 Amendment 15 would have shifted power from the House leaders to its members and allowed elected lawmakers to represent their constituents by ensuring that at least one item of proposed legislation would get a vote by the House. That's so we can actually see who's voting yay or nay on something. Did it actually hit the floor? Did somebody actually get to vote on it?
Or did it die? Because that's how a lot of legislation, it
Oh,
just dies.
well,
It never gets to the floor.
And we talked about that with the chairs and vice chairs, right? If they're being Democrats and even a Republican, Stephanie Click. Why did the banning of gender modification and genital mutilation go nowhere? She slow walked that through committee. Brought it out to calendaring. Oh, I just can't make it to the time. Sorry. She was a Republican.
That's how they punish people they don't like.
Right. Well, so that amendment, Holland voted against it. H.R. 4 Amendment 17 would have increased transparency. Again, talking about increasing transparency. That required calendaring committees. They would have had to take a vote on each piece of legislation instead of just letting it die in committee. Now that sounds reasonable, right? You want to make sure that, okay, it gets into there. Let's make sure it gets a vote. Holland voted against it.
You want to know who kills it.
Right? So, I mean, and we have these things in here, right? I mean, I can sit here and go through and read it, but I'll leave them here. We've got this stuff here for you to look at. I don't understand what they're hiding. I don't see why they're trying to keep things out of our view. We're the voters. We're the taxpayers. Right? It's supposed to represent your voice. That's what I want to do. I want to go down there to represent you. I want to go down there and represent my family, my community, everyone here in District 33. Yes, I will have to work with Democrats. I understand that. That's also where my negotiation skill. 30 years in corporate IT, working with all these organizations, I think I know how to negotiate. I can work. Yes, ma'am.
When you talked about California and what happened to it, would you enumerate on that?
Sure. Well, so a lot of this is what happened. This is what led to some of that. Because they decided, well, we don't have to let these things be seen. We don't have to let this happen. We understand that people are asking for that. We don't need to give it to them. We know better. When a legislature especially a representative, isn't representing the people but is acting as a trustee, that's when we have a problem. So if you look at the legislation that's been passed, look at the legislation that's been proposed and advocated for, do we have many representatives that are actual representatives, or are they trustees? We asked them to do these things. These were 8 items that we asked them to prioritize. Put them first. Put them as their top pieces of legislation. And we gave them the first 4 months of the session to do that. And if they didn't do it, then, okay, well, did you bring it up in a special session? Oh, they did. You know what a special session is? That's when the governor calls for a special session and says, we're going to work on this piece of legislation. Okay, why do they have to be told to come back to work on something? It's not a priority. If it was a priority, they would have taken it and they would have done it and they would have gotten it through. Okay? There's an analogy I use for the chairs and vice chairs, for them being Democrats as opposed to being with the majority party. And so, Steve, let's say you have a football team and I got a football team. We show up to the game, I walk over to Steve's sideline and I go, hey, can I have your defensive coach run my offense? Do you think I plan to win that game? No. That's what's happening. When we ask the Democrats and we appoint them to be chairs and vice chairs in committees, we know they're not going to pass our legislation.
Right.
Gives them political cover though. Oh, we tried.
And
That's the only reason to give her a place at the table?
Well, they
That's
don't.
what he
They
says.
don't do this in D.C. Republicans don't appoint
No.
Democrats, but
And in
we do it at
California-
the state level.
In California, it was death by 1,000 cuts. You have people in a very woke culture, shaming people into what they think they should do or not do.
Yeah.
And so people that want to get along, go along to get along, and we just want to get along. They just give a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, until finally there's nothing left to take.
And they would use the same excuse. Well, we're giving them a seat at the table. We're letting their voice be heard. We want to make sure that they feel that they're representing. We want to make sure that they have that option. Why? If they were to get that option, they would have been elected into that office. We wouldn't have been elected there. They would have more Democrats in power, and they would be, because I'll tell you right now, if the Democrats were in charge, if we shift the power from Republicans to Democrats, oh, heaven help us if that happens.
But shame on us if we do.
Because you
We
know,
gotta work for that.
and I know, they will not appoint Republicans into
Right.
chair and vice chair positions. Because they want to get their legislation pushed through. How many of them, election integrity, right? We're talking about voter ID. What is their stance on voter IDs? It's racist. It's suppressive. Really? You know, the people that you're saying that we're suppressing their vote and that we're racist against, they show an ID when they get on a plane, when they get on a bus, when they rent a car, when they go to a hotel room, if they go to a club, if they go to a bar to buy a drink. You're asked for your ID.
You go to Walmart and buy wine.
You're asked for your ID.
So therefore, all IDs should be eliminated, period.
All IDs are racist. Is that
Yeah.
okay? All right.
Can I give a quickie? When we moved here from Maryland to register Hayden for Rowlett soccer, I had to show my driver's license and bring his birth certificate for 5-year-old soccer.
Right.
So
But
there
it-
you go.
but
That's
it's too
5-year-old
much to
soccer
vote.
versus voting.
All right, so in 5 minutes, I'm supposed to be on the Zoom with the Collin County League of Women Voters. It's going to be an open forum, and the other 2 candidates are supposed to be on there.
Oh, is Justin really gonna show up?
We don't know.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
gonna-
So you're invited to hang out and wait and be a live audience participation with this if you want. I'm fine with it.
We have 5 minutes of questions, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
So what's your opinion on the border?
My opinion on the border is that we are not doing anywhere near enough. Okay, we already have, and the troops, Operation Lone Star is a failure. It's a disaster. Okay, as much as people say, hey, we got troops down there. No, we've got troops down there, and we found out today, talking with a mother of one of the troops down there, that they don't have water. They don't have appropriate resources. They don't have, some of them don't have ammo. Some of them don't even have, bulletproof vests. Okay, that's a disaster. As far as what we need to do, we need to get the wall built. We already have the money for it. Money's already been allocated, it's already there. Materials are already there, sitting there. And the contractors are sitting there twiddling their thumbs. They literally are being paid to do nothing. All we have to do is push for it and say, build, go, begin, start, whatever word they want to use.
I thought government ever did that.
He didn't.
1.7 miles.
Why?
That's
He's
it.
gonna lose if he doesn't do something.
He wants to
Why
convince
would
you that he has.
He wants to convince you the 1.7 miles has fixed the problem, but
It's 1,250
He's
miles
the
of border,
problem.
so I think we're smarter than that.
yeah.
Arizona has fence that they're not using, we could even buy that.
Right?
They won't let you buy it.
No?
Well, I'm wondering if the materials are being ripped off the way they are at a lot of building sites.
You never know.
Yeah, more needs to be done.
Right? Did that answer your question?
Yes, and
Okay.
the other one is, unless someone else wants to ask one. My other one is if the Supreme Court strikes down the abortion law, that, I think you mentioned that earlier, that it didn't get, if they struck that down, well, sorry, let me sort of clear the top
That's
of my
okay.
glasses on. If the Supreme Court strikes down the abortion law that Texas has, what steps as a senator would you take?
Well, I'm not going to be a senator.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Senator down.
That's okay. That's all right.
Well, we have the trigger law that did get passed.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
trigger law that got passed, basically, if that happens, Roe v. Wade gets reversed here in Texas.
It outlaws abortion in
Yeah,
Texas.
abortion literally becomes against the law in Texas.
That's
I would
what triggers.
think- what
So
would
the
I do? I would,
Supremes
yeah.
wrote down
I mean, I can push
triggers
to advocate for that, but it's
illegal
already in
action.
place.
Yeah.
So it
But it's
wouldn't,
depending on Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
It's depending on the Supreme Court to do something, which we don't know if it's
Right.
gonna happen.
and I will absolutely advocate for that. Actually, there was a pledge I signed to also advocate for the abolishment of abortion.
Okay, one other thing you said.
Sure.
About this. So you believe that, or you think, in your opinion, you think the best thing to do for schools is to be a choice school, and that if parents decide if they want to homeschool, that they would be getting those funds?
Well, you wouldn't be spending your money, so you wouldn't be taxed as much on that. You would get it basically as a credit or a voucher. Okay, and that would be the same thing. If you're not gonna homeschool, but you're gonna take your kids and put them in a private school. Okay, now for homeschooling, you do get a $25,000 exemption, I believe it is, if you do the exemption.
Something like
So I think there's a homestead exemption that you can do if you're homeschooling your kids.
I
A lot of people.
homeschool, I hope that's true.
I haven't done that yet.
I think that's, yeah, I want you to do
Yeah.
that.
And she's a teacher, like, what?
Will you
Okay.
pledge to do that right now? 'Cause
Homeschool, homestead.
Yeah.
And that's, on the school thing, I'm an old person, I've never had children, I certainly am not, I don't have stepchildren, and yet, most of the taxes I pay are
Mhm,
for
exactly.
school.
Oh,
You-
and
you
you
have
also
to-
have property taxes.
There are deductions for older people,
Mhm.
but I'm still paying $2,500 a year,
Bless you, bud.
Sure.
and that doesn't look like it's going to change.
No.
Whether it's homeschooling or whatever.
Right.
Shouldn't there be a,
So what they've been talking about, and I don't remember who it was that proposed this, they said anyone over the age of 65 would be exempt from that portion of paying for the schools. The schools are gonna get their money anyway. With all the exemptions that went into place for military, for veterans, for even some of the, and I can't remember some of the other classes
People with
that they had in there.
disabilities.
Right, the disabilities aspect, okay. So even with all of that, guess what? The schools are not hurting from their funds on that because they get them from the state surplus.
That's where they pay for all those tax breaks.
So if we were to, and this goes into the next part, if we were to eliminate property tax, okay, the way that you would do this is you would pay it down through the state surplus budget. And you would pay it down like you would pay down any normal debt. Over the time, as you start to make these chunk payments and get them down, each year, that overall payment's gonna be less. You apply the same amount of money onto it, and again, overall payment's gonna be less and over again. So we're looking at about an 8 to 10 year time frame that you would eliminate this debt, and you could be completely free of property taxes. Don Huffines has proposed it, Alan West has proposed it, Chad Prater has proposed it. Of course, none of the Democrats are gonna propose that because they like taxes. So it is possible, we can get rid of property taxes.
That'd be nice.
And it won't impact the schools, schools will continue to get their money. We may have to increase a surplus, or not a surplus tax, but a consumption tax, okay?
A
Maybe there's a
sales
slight
tax.
increase to a sales tax, I don't know.
But think about paying off the debt. Think about like when you're paying your mortgage. You know, in the beginning of your mortgage, it's all
Principal.
interest and then a little principal.
Yep.
What if you paid that debt off and it was only principal? So if we take out the school debt